All right, thank you everyone for joining us for today's webinar. It's an overview of our secure collaboration product, Vera. So I am Gerard Shallow. I am part of the marketing team here at Fortra, and I'm going to do a quick intro to the Vera product before I turn it over to Charles Head. And Charles is a pre-sales engineer and solutions architect, and part of the Fortra's data protection sales team. Jumping up to the next slide here, for anyone who's not familiar with Fortra as a whole, we've grown quite a bit in recent years. So in addition to growing in size, we've also expanded. We now have offices and customers in 18 countries globally. We have over 3,000 employees and over 30,000 customers in the Fortra family. So moving on to the next slide, I'm not going to go through everything that you see here, but this is a look at the breadth of Fortra's product line. You'll see that it spans both software solutions, such as we're going to talk about today with Vera, as well as services such as penetration testing, threat emulation. So Fortra has a very broad cybersecurity product line, and we go very deep in terms of functionality in every one of these areas. So moving on, this is going to be one of our themes for today. It's what makes your organization unique. And by this, we're referring to intellectual property and how that IP lives electronically. So things like design files, HR documents, communications from the board. This is the sensitive data which is really worth protecting. So one more slide here. Our solution for securely collaborating with others, both internally as well as externally, to your organization is Vera. So what you're going to see today on today's webinar is depicted here. So Vera is a product that allows you to control who has access to protected digital assets, enables you to limit what people can do with those files, to establish how long collaborators, both internal and external, can access these assets, and restricts sharing of content with unintended parties. And we also give you the ability through Vera to instantly revoke access to any of these files at any time. So with that, Charles, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right. So I do have a couple of slides to show. This slide shows the architecture of Vera. It's a cloud-based solution that we host for you in Amazon, and that allows the internal and external collaborators to connect using a Vera client, or they could choose to not use the Vera client if they have the ability to use view in browser. That is, they were granted access to view the file in their browser, and they could do that instead. And then there's also the ability to access the Vera tenant using a website, and you can also use it to secure files in bulk in places like Box, Dropbox, SharePoint, and OneDrive. The Vera client can be installed on Windows, Android, Mac, and iOS. And we also have a REST API and SDKs for all four of those, plus Linux. These are some of the ways that you can secure a file. You could right-click on a file to secure it if you have the Vera client installed. And also, thanks to the Vera client, you could have a button in your toolbar for Outlook so that when you send an email, you could choose to secure all the files and grant all the recipients access. Or as an alternative, this could be automated. The admin could choose to have a rule that executes when people say send an email, and then the files get secured and the sender doesn't have to take part in that process. And then you can also have files get bulk secured in places like local folders, cloud locations. And finally, there's the website with a drag and drop feature that allows you to drag the file into the website and then it'll get secured. And then in addition to that, of course, we have similar things for iOS and Android. So in addition to the ability to secure files on your mobile device, you can also receive files and view them securely. So let's see Vera in action. So to do this, I'm going to start by showing you what it's like for a user that has the Vera client installed. I actually have it installed on my computer, and that's the reason why I've got these icon indicators to tell me which files are secured. You can see these 3 files are secured and these 2 are not. Another difference between those files is that the ones that are secured have a .html extension, whereas the ones that are not secured have the original extension. So if I wanted to secure this confidential data file, I could right-click on it and choose Secure with Vera. And then this pop-up came up, which allows me to choose Secure which will immediately secure the file, and then I could always grant or change the access later, or I could take the opportunity now to grant access to a person, a domain, a group, or anyone. But instead, I'm going to cancel out of that, and I'm going to create a new email that will allow me to show you what it's like to just simply send an email and have it secured on send and have the recipients automatically get access to the file. So I've got a new email here. I'm going to drag the file into the email. Notice it still says .pdf, so it will say .html once I send it. And then I'll put my my Gmail address in there. So that'll be, yeah, there it is right there. And you might be saying to yourself, well, this is not a secure place to be sending this confidential file. We might want to set up our DLP to stop me from doing this. And maybe this is not a secure way to send the file. But with Vera, we are not concerned about sending unsecurely or the file being stored in an unsecured location, because if someone gets their hands on this file and they are not on the access list, then they essentially have a junk file on their hands. So we like to think of the Vera protected file as being a mobile lockbox. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and send this file, and you'll see it in a split second. The file will get secured, and then we'll take a look at what the sent email looks like. So I'll click send, and then we'll take a look at the sent email real fast. So here's the email. Oh, actually, let me try that again. I forgot to choose a policy. So real quick, I'll just go ahead and send it one more time, but this time I'll remember to click secure attachments, and then I'll choose full lock, no second login. It's a custom policy that I created. And then I'll click send. I'd have seen it get secured to the last second there. And this is what the email looks like that I just sent. You can see the file just got secured. And that step that I had to take of choosing the policy, choosing to secure it, of course, that could have been automated. We could have made a rule that would have saved me from having to do that. All right, so we've got a VM here that does not have Vera installed. So the reason why I'm showing you this is because I wanted to show you this, what it's like for someone who does not have the Vera client installed. So here's that test email that I just received. So you can see it's got the confidential file with the .html extension. I'll go ahead and download that. And then I'll open it. And since the file is a .html file, you can see that it automatically opens within my web browser. In other words, one of the reasons why we wrap our secured files in HTML is so that if somebody receives the file and they don't have the Vera client installed and they double click on it, it'll automatically open in their supported browser, whatever the default browser is, and then the landing page walks them to the next step. And the next step here is for the user to log in, because Vera needs to know who this person is before Vera knows what kind of access to give them. Another thing that we don't see here is the password field. All we see is the email address, because right now Vera doesn't know whether I have a password or not. So if I type in my Gmail address and click enter, we can see that it's asking for a verification code. And the reason why is because I don't have a password for Vera that goes along with that Gmail address. So what this means is that we can actually share this file with anyone in the world. Every single email address in the world qualifies as being something we can add to the access list. And if that's an email address that's not known to Vera, then that means the user doesn't have a password for that file, in which case they're going to get an email verification. So let's see what that verification looks like. So I'll go back to my inbox in Gmail. Here's the email verification. Copy this to my clipboard, paste the verification code. And now we can see that my Gmail user has access to the file, but it's very locked down. Because of this custom policy that I've assigned to this user, one of the things that's happening to them is they can't see the whole file all at once. This is a policy setting called X-ray. It's forcing the user to have to scroll up and down to see the whole file, which makes it more difficult to capture screenshots. And by the way, I could have actually stopped this user from being able to share their screen or capture screenshots. So the reason why you're able to see my screen right now is because that policy does not stop the user from being able to share their screen. Another thing that we're doing to this user is we're forcing them to view the file with their email address as a watermark. So again, that makes it harder to cobble together a screenshot. And then if I scroll all the way to the top, you can see the Vera toolbar, which indicates that I'm not allowed to copy, I'm not allowed to print. If I was, these icons would have been lit up. So if I were to try to copy data, you see it's not even allowing me to highlight the text. So now let's see what happens if I change this user's access. So to do that, I'm going to go into the Vera tenant. So this is the Vera tenant website for the tenant that I'm using. Notice it's chead.vera.com. Your tenant will be something else.vera.com. And if I go into the files, you can see all the files that are secured by this tenant. And the reason why I can see all the files is because I'm currently logged in with an admin role. If I was logged in with a user role, then instead of files, I would have seen my files and it would have only showed me the files that I've secured. And here's that confidential data that I just secured just minutes ago. And if I click on that file, you can see that this is not the actual file itself. I can't download the file from here. Vera is not a repository for your files. Vera is not how you get the file to that end user. You can choose whatever method you want to share the file. You can email it to them, whatever kind of unsecure method you'd like to use because the file itself is secured. So what we see here is not the place where you can download the file. Instead, it's the place where we can see who currently has access to it, and we can change that access or grant access to somebody else. So here's that Gmail address that's currently enjoying their full lockdown policy. And if I were to change this policy to, say, collaborate, and then go back to my Gmail and refresh the view, we can see that I no longer have X-ray, I no longer have a watermark, and now I can actually copy the data if I want to. So now let's go back again, and this time we'll change the access list again, but this time we're going to revoke their access. So I'll click revoke access, confirm that, and then we'll watch this screen, and sometimes this happens just in a couple of seconds. So go ahead and expedite this. I'll just go ahead and refresh my view, and we'll see I no longer have access to the file. And this is exactly what I would have seen if I had somehow gotten a copy of this file, but I wasn't already on the access list. And now I can click log out. I could try a different login to see if someone else has access, some other account that I have access to, or I could click request access. So if I click request access, then it gives me a message that the file owner is about to get notified. And what that means is that me, the person who's logged into my client that secured the file owner, that I'm going to get an email that will walk me through the process of granting access for the Gmail address. So I just got that access request email. Here it is right here. You can see that the Gmail address has requested access to my confidential file. If I click manage access, then it takes me to a screen where I can choose to ignore, and then the Gmail address will not get any further notification, or I can click deny and my Gmail address will receive a notification that they were denied, or I can click grant, and then I can choose a policy to give them. So this time I'm going to choose the allow unsecure policy. This is another custom policy that I created that's going to give this user full access to that file. So I'll click grant. And now the Gmail address is about to get an email to alert them to the fact that they now have access to the file. But we don't have to wait for that email. We can just go right back to my Gmail account or the file that was already open and refresh the view. Now it is asking me for another verification code, so we'll have to go back to Gmail and re-authenticate. So one more try. And then I'll paste the verification code. And now we can see what it looks like for someone that has full access to the file. One of the big differences here is that I can click unsecure and download. And that will allow me to receive a fully decrypted version of this file, which is not necessarily a good thing to allow this person to be able to decrypt the file, because as long as the file stays encrypted, that means we can change their access, we can revoke their access, and we can log all of their activity. Whereas if they unsecure the file and now they have an unsecured version of the file, then we can no longer control that file. The unsecured version of that file will be out there in the wild, and they can do whatever they want with it with no logging and no ability to revoke their access. So that's really the power, or one of the places where you can really see the value of Vera, is that you can allow someone to access the file even though they don't have the ability to decrypt the file, which means we can continue to lock down their experience, have the watermark or the X-ray, and change their access, revoke their access, and see all the activity. So let's take a look at that. Let's go ahead and switch over to the tenant again. And this time we'll see what happens when I go to this next tab over here. We've been looking at this has file access tab quite a bit. So now I'm going to click activity log, and we can see everything that's happened with this file from the beginning, which is the moment that it got secured. So in that moment that it got secured, a couple of things happened. So not only did it get secured, but the Gmail address got access to it. And then if we go to the next page, we can see that the Gmail address closed. They accessed the file and they closed it, and then their access was revoked, and they were blocked access. So they requested access, and that's when the Fortran address gave them the unsecured policy, allow unsecure. And then the Gmail address accessed the file with the allow unsecure policy and viewed the file. And then we can go over here to access locations and see on the map exactly where this user was. Now this is based on their IP address. And yeah, that brings us to the end of the demo. So I'll go ahead and kick it back over to close it out. Gerard.
All right. Yeah, that is the end of today's webinar. So thanks very much to Charles for his time and for showing us the Vera product today. We ask that if you found this session to be valuable, and please pass this along to your colleagues who also might find value in today's demo. And of course, please reach out to us if there's something that we can help with or any questions you might have. So thank you.